Sorry, no debate, and no dumbest bill in America either. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and the millennial joining me today is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer. This podcast, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, by the way, for joining us. This podcast is titled Sorry, No Debate. And why do you suppose this podcast is titled Sorry, No Debate? Because across America, the Democrats who are running for office have chosen to not debate their Republican opponents. By the way, this is at all levels of government. All levels of government. And before we go on a wonderful talk about this sorry, no debate spree of candidates, everything from Carrie Lake to Adam Laxalt to John Fetterman to John Kennedy of Louisiana, we actually wanted to talk to you briefly about, of course, this incredible event that just occurred, namely that North Korea flew missiles over Japan. And of course, those missiles could have been carrying nukes. And that's, of course, the whole purpose of why North Korea decided to demonstrate this show of force. And so many Americans, I believe, don't understand how dangerous this really is. Namely, that when China and Russia feel threatened, if you notice, there are always a couple of countries that engage in mischief when they feel threatened by the U.S. or threatened by others. So, in this particular case, we have this incredibly destabilizing crisis known as Ukraine, where there's a war between Russia and the Ukraine, but the United States is fighting the war by proxy through Ukraine and with Ukrainians. And we have, naturally, North Korea that has decided to involve itself in nukes and basically shooting missiles across Japan, albeit the missiles did not have nukes on them, but they could have, to demonstrate that a world war, of course, is certainly feeling a little bit closer today than it did, I'm sorry, maybe when the last president was in office. And meanwhile, Iran, which normally would be engaging in lots of mischief, is temporarily quiet because the Biden administration is doing what? They're promising Iran to get back into the deal with them, whereby Iran gets to have nukes. That's right. We have a country, North Korea, that has nukes that you really think shouldn't have them, and we all agree with that. And then we have a country, Iran, where the Biden administration is like, oh, you should have nukes too. This is ridiculously stupid. And Tucker Carlson spoke about this. In fact, Christopher Hopkins, our producer, was telling me this today. He saw a brief clip from Tucker Carlson, who spoke about this last night. And I must tell you, his is really the only newscast of hard news that's actually speaking about this incredibly dangerous issue of mutually assured destruction, whereby once someone launches one nuke, you're going to have a very quick destruction of humanity across the planet. And so the world is not safer under Joe Biden. And of course, according to Kamala Harris, North Korea is our ally. Now, granted, that is a gaffe, and but it just shows you how stupid she is. Okay, it shows you how unprepared she is for prime time in the international scene, let alone the national scene. And this is what happens when stoners are elected. Okay, I'm sorry. You know, she's a California stoner. And by the way, you want to be a stoner? Be a stoner. I don't care. But do me a favor. Don't try to get into a job that you're wholly unqualified for when your mind is completely fried from being a stoner for so many years. Like, I don't know, Vice President of the United States? Oh, yeah, like North Korea is like our most important ally. Throughout Asia, most important. So anyway, I digress from this podcast titled Sorry, No Debate, because I wanted to bring that up. It is so important, and we just had some breaking news from the Daily Caller, namely that the United States of America has condemned North Korea for launching and shooting this missile across and over top of Japan. Okay, fine. That's kind of what we have to do. But folks, when you get into a situation where the heat continues to increase with international politics, and you have countries testing things or testing each other. We have China testing the U.S. on Taiwan and on dominance throughout Asia. You have Russia trying to reassert itself as the former Soviet Union under Vladimir Putin, and they're testing the United States and also testing. And then you have Europe being its usual stupid self with respect to getting involved in dependency, which, as you all know, you should never be dependent. Yet the United States of America became dependent on China for so many things, including some of the most important things, like, I don't know, medicine, which we learned during the pandemic. So, folks, there are a lot of lessons to be learned, and I'm hoping that an honest media actually starts to talk about this and also speaks about the fact that you really need someone competent in the White House and competent as the vice president as well, in case if the person in the White House falls ill for some reason, so that they can take on these incredibly important issues that are occurring in the world today, namely a bunch of countries who want to destabilize the world and supplant the United States as the world's superpower. That would not be a very good thing for the American people. If you're a Democrat and you love spending programs, which depend on printing lots of money, that day would end the day that we were supplanted as a superpower, just so you know. And if you're a Republican and you're someone who loves international, you're one of those Republicans, I should say, because much of the Republican Party is like Tucker Carlson, where they don't want to get involved in these overseas skirmishes. But if you're a Republican that does want to get involved in the Ukraine and so forth, and I should say that you will very quickly be disappointed when you realize that when you're supplanted as a superpower, you no longer have the leverage to project power across the planet because someone is bigger and stronger and more powerful than you, and their currency has also supplanted you, and you can no longer borrow money and print money at will in order to build and expand the military. Lots of really important stuff happening in the United States as the run-up to the November elections occur, which takes me to this podcast titled, Sorry, No Debate. This is what Democrats are doing across the country. They know they can't debate on policy. So they've decided instead to not debate at all and talk about how beautiful the sun is outside, how wonderful the green grass is. Everything is fine, but no debate because you can't talk about the issues. And folks, as I indicated earlier, this is at every level of government. So I rarely talk about this, but I'm in the Maryland House of Delegates. Do you know that the League of Women Voters, who runs the actual debates in my county, actually in a multiple county area, has chosen to not invite me to their annual League of Voters debate of candidates who are at the state level simply because I don't have an opponent, which is a whole nother reason. Whole nother issue, I should say. Why don't I have an opponent? That's never happened before. Every time I've run for office, I've had an opponent in the general election, and it has been a brutal election. Brutal, every single one. This one I don't. And it's because they know that if I have an opponent, it's going to elevate the issues to the point that it'll be front page. People will see it more. They'll notice it more. It'll be on social media more. They'll be talking about it more. That's exactly what the Democrats don't want. If you have the ability to speak clearly and articulate your beliefs, and you really are an individual who holds those beliefs in a principled way, the Democrats are terrified of you, and they do not want to debate you. And if you are in a district that is just even remotely Republican, they may not even want to run against you. I even have a colleague that's in a nearby county, and the Democrats didn't want to run against him either for the same exact reason. And the League of Women Voters in his county, a whole different League of Women Voters organization, but part of the national organization overall, which shows you they're coordinating, did not invite him to their debate either. Don't you think the citizens have a right to know who's running and who's not running and what that person believes? And I think the simple answer is yes. We all, of course, agree that debates are good. And the more debates, the better. In a perfect world, you'd have 3 debates, especially for United States Senate and United States Congress, and for governor, and for a state house. You know, that would make sense. And I think most of us would agree. But because we do not have an actual media, because media is dead, there's no way to hold to account the person who is refusing to actually debate. So here is an example. In a normally functioning republic, yes, we are a republic. In a normally functioning republic, you would have a media that would say, hey, you're running for governor? Well, since you're running for governor, we're going to have a debate, and it's just a matter of you telling us the debate times and dates that work best for you. So let's have 3 debates. And then your opponent goes, no, I only want 1 debate. Okay, fine, let's have 1 debate. And then your opponent is like, yeah, well, none of those dates work for me. And they keep trying to run out the clock. That is what is happening, except the media is not even reporting this or trying to hold anyone to account. What should really be happening, ladies and gentlemen, I think that most of us would agree out there in podcast land, including a lot of Democrats who are common sense thinkers, certainly Republicans, and certainly the unaffiliated and the independents out there across the country. I think we would all agree that the media should set these 3 debates, set the times, and just say, look, here are the times. You can either show up or not show up. And if your opponent doesn't show up, then we now have an example of what the no debate politician looks like. And there's an opportunity for you now to answer questions. You have no opponent. And now you can characterize what your opponent actually believes about those things, because clearly you know, because they have a voting record or they've talked about them in the past. And that is detrimental to your opponent. That's why we should have a truly independent media and a fair and balanced media that is willing to engage and run these debates for governor, for state house offices like state delegates, state senate, for United States Congress, for United States Senate. This makes perfect sense. But across the country, believe you me, the Democrats are saying, no, I don't want to debate. No, it's like I'm just so busy. So busy. You know, there's so much campaigning that's going on. I can't have myself contrasted with the other side. And because it is happening across the country, including all the way down to my race, it's pretty obvious that this is coordinated by the Democrat National Committee across the United States. So first up, we have candidate for Arizona Governor Kari Lake. She takes her campaign on the road. In other words, she's just doing a road show across Arizona because her opponent refuses to debate. And this is in the Epic Times. It's also in a bunch of other newspapers as well. You know where you won't see it very often is in the Arizona newspapers or news sources. You won't, because the news media is covering up for an individual who doesn't want to debate in a republic. That's the whole purpose of having someone represent you, is to know what they stand for and to have a compare and contrast debate between the two so you can make an intelligent decision as to who you want to vote for. So Arizona Democrat candidate for Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, who's a far lefty, has refused to debate her Republican opponent, Kari Lake, ahead of the November 8th midterm election, with Hobbs's campaign telling local media she won't argue with a conspiracy theorist. There you go. Instead, Hobbs's Arizona Secretary of State requested a town hall style format where each candidate would sit for 30 minutes in an interview in a controlled setting. In other words, no compare and contrast between the issues. Obviously, that is exactly what the Democrats don't want. They don't want compare and contrast, as I've said before. So Secretary of State Hobbs, who's running for governor of Arizona, remains willing and eager, quote, to participate in a town hall style event, such as the forum she participated in September, in which Arizonans were able to hear directly from her about her in-depth policy plans and how she would approach governing the state, wrote Nicole Dumont, Hobbs's campaign manager, in a letter to the Citizens Clean Elections Commission in Phoenix. So in other words, in Arizona, the best way to get elected, if you're Katie Hobbs, is to not tell anyone anything about what you believe or what you would do if you were elected. Debates are critical. The political debate is perhaps as old as politics itself. It's an opportunity for the voters to gauge the candidate's image, honesty, and substance. It's considered democracy. Debates are a critical tool for voters to learn directly from candidates about where they stand on issues. Yeah, you think? Said Clean Elections Voter Education Director Gina Roberts. Quote, voters are often inundated with messaging from different sources during this election season, and debates offer voters a direct line of communication with the candidates. Yes, it does. So, as polls are tightening, and since there isn't a debate, because clearly the Democrats are going to lose on policy all day long in Arizona, Kari Lake decided, ladies and gentlemen, to take the show on the road in Arizona, and she decided to go campaign and do press releases and take questions and so forth from the media and from individuals. But of course, instead of the reporters in Arizona asking Kari Lake, instead of the reporters asking Kari Lake questions or her opponent questions about why there isn't a debate and why debate would be a good thing, no, reporters aren't doing that at all. Instead, the reporters are asking about abortion to Kari Lake. Yes, that's correct. So think about it. You have a situation where the border is completely and utterly insecure in Arizona. You have an economy that is tanking, a stock market that is tanking. You have the United States in upper single-digit inflation, 8.5% thereabouts, and you have interest rates that could, along with inflation, hit double digits, kind of like the 1970s. We don't know, but we know it's not good. We have gas prices through the roof, and we have the world in disorder and potentially entering a new phase of a potential world war. Some might say that it is already occurring. This is something that I have argued for many podcasts, that we have so much instability in the world that we are in de facto world war, but it is a covert world war. Nonetheless, the corporate media doesn't want to have actual debates about all of these issues. So corporate media want voters to believe it's Republicans who must defend their pro-life stance. But as Arizona's GOP gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake pointed out in a recent exchange with a reporter, it is Democrats who should have to explain their support for abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, which, by the way, is true. Okay? It's true in many states. And I can tell you in my state, it is definitely true, and the media has utterly hidden this from the American people and from the citizens of my state. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a clip from Kari Lake. Remember, this is the individual running for governor. She's a Republican in Arizona. And Kari Lake wants there to be a debate. But because there isn't, she's doing the roadshow. She's talking to reporters openly, being very accessible about her beliefs. And the reporters aren't asking a single question about her opponent because her opponent is in hiding like Joe Biden was when he was running for office because they can't defend their policies. Here's the clip from Kari Lake. Listen to this. Here it is.
Tell me, abortion is effectively banned in the state right now. Tell me, is that something that you support?
I support saving as many lives as possible. And what I really want to know, and I've been waiting, I tune into you guys all the time. I want to know where Katie Hobbs stands, but I never hear you guys ask her that. I'm pro-life. My plan would be that every woman who walks into an abortion clinic know that there are options out there. They don't have to choose that. There's families who would love to adopt a baby. And right now, the way it's been going, they go in and they only have one option.
That's it.
Nobody tells them that there's other options. We want to help our women. If they're afraid, we want to help them. We want to give women health care, and I want to help people. But I really challenge you, and I'm happy to get back to you on this, when you find out where Katie Hobbs stands, because let me tell you where she stands. She supports abortion right up until birth and after birth.
That's right.
She supports if a baby survives a botched abortion, that baby die on a cold metal tray.
True.
And none of you ever try to get her to talk about her stance. So get back to me after you do.
Thank
and
you.
Tell her. And tell her that I want to debate this topic on October 12th, but she really needs to show up for that debate.
So that is epic, right? Because here is a woman, okay? A woman who, of course, can get pregnant, unlike Pete Buttigieg. They cannot. A woman who's talking common sense about this issue. Namely, that life is so important, and she's talking, and I believe her when she says this. She truly cares about life. And the Democrat Party has adopted policies. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this, okay? I can tell you this as a legislator. It is 100% true. And I know Christopher Hopkins, who's a millennial, will back me up on this, that in my state of Maryland, it is the law that you can, if you so choose, abort a child in the 9th month of pregnancy, and the child can be deemed perfectly healthy, and the mom can be deemed perfectly healthy. All the mom has to do in order to obtain the abortion in the 9th month of pregnancy with that perfectly healthy child is to sign a statement that she is having a mental health crisis. Okay? Her life isn't in danger, just that she's having a mental health crisis. And then there are a couple of clinics in my state that will engage in and perform such abortions. Ladies and gentlemen, the media is silent on this in my state. They are silent on this in Arizona. And isn't this true, Chris?
Yeah.
It's 100% true. Okay? 100% true in my state. The media is silent. They do not talk about this ever. They always engage in this attack of Republicans who are holding these principled positions that life matters, and can't we even have a conversation that in the 9th month this is murder? Because it is the ninth month of a perfectly healthy human being. And you have Carrie Lake, who is having this conversation because her opponent is not only unwilling to have a debate, but her opponent isn't being asked any questions by the media, the same media that's going after Carrie Lake nonstop as Carrie Lake goes on a tour across her state and talks about the issues. And what the Democrats learned, I believe, from the 2020 election with Joe Biden is that a complete moron can hide in his basement and win an election. This is a whole other story. He can, quote, win an election, unquote, simply by hiding from the media. And the media never has to ask him any questions because they don't want to. This is not a functioning republic, ladies and gentlemen. This is a post-constitutional republic when you have a media and you have enough Americans who think that is okay for any candidate to not debate. It's just disgusting and it is wrong. But I just want to say kudos to Carrie Lake for taking on the issues, speaking about these issues in a principled and honest way, And her opponent, of course, who is hoping that she can get over the finish line. The Democrat wants to get over the finish line by hiding what she wants to do. And folks, we already know, right? Empty out the prisons, more people, innocent people get murdered. No borders, of course. And then we have overpopulation in our country of towns and cities, and including terrorists who are crossing over the border, and fentanyl and human trafficking. And they think that's okay, the Democrats. An economy that is faltering, people that are going to be unemployed. What I don't understand is that we're being told that people are being laid off across the country and that is likely to continue as the Fed increases interest rates. Well, where in the heck are all these people going to be working who are crossing the border? So the Democrat Party is really engaging in policies that are destroying the United States of America. And there's no way we can actually know about policy alternatives if we don't have debates. And speaking of such debates or lack thereof, or the best way to run a campaign in America today, Adam Laxalt is running for, I believe, United States Senate in Nevada. So he would be a United States Senator if he were to get elected. He's running against Catherine Cortez Masto, who's the sitting senator. Okay? Same thing in that state. Namely, that the Democrat doesn't want to debate. So in the Daily Caller, Republican Nevada Senate candidate Adam Laxalt will release an advertisement Tuesday, which is today, that includes a number of law enforcement officials saying Democrat Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is dangerous for the state, and they will be supporting Laxalt in November. The ad is titled Dangerous, and it is being put out today by Adam Laxalt. Now, keep in mind, Adam Laxalt is currently slightly ahead or even, depending on which poll that you actually look at. As you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrat is not only not being asked questions, so the media in Nevada is not asking the Democrat to defend her policy of letting criminals out of prison and at the same time not not charging people who are committing crimes. So the state is less safe than it's ever been. So the media isn't asking any of those questions. Additionally, of course, Catherine Cortez Masto doesn't want any debates. Why would she? She can't defend her policies. I'm bringing this particular race up, because I think this is a critical issue in all states that have urban areas, where the urban areas kind of wag the tail of the rest of the state. The urban areas have the largest voting block of the entire state, which, of course, in the state of Nevada would be Las Vegas, of course, right? Las Vegas is clearly left of center, but there are enormous numbers of Hispanics in Las Vegas. They actually make the city work. And I'm pretty sure they didn't come to the United States in order to be victimized again, like they were back at home, by criminals and by lawlessness. So Adam Laxalt, understanding this, has decided to go ahead and run this ad. We have the ad. It's fantastic. And here it is.
I'm Adam Laxalt, and I approve this message.
Catherine Cortez Masto pretends to support law enforcement,
but voted to rubber stamp radical officials,
including activists who refused to prosecute drug dealers,
and supported defunding police.
Cortez Masto called police racist.
And when a local officer was shot in the head
During riots she encouraged.
She didn't say a word.
we retract our endorsement.
We retract our endorsement.
We retract our endorsement of Catherine Cortez Masto.
Catherine Cortez Masto is dangerous for police.
And dangerous for Nevada.
See, so this is what should happen in a normally functioning republic. In a normally functioning republic, when you had a debate, you would have police unions and teachers unions, as well as independent groups and unaffiliated groups and any kind of interest groups who would be able to make their decisions based on who they were going to endorse in a race on actual policy differences. So Adam Laxalt, of course, has done a great job, because initially the police union, as you just heard, supported Catherine Cortez Masto when she ran for Senate, U.S. Senate the first time and won. And now they realize that she is the cancel the police idiot, like the rest of the Democrat Party. So now they are endorsing Adam Laxalt. But then at the same time, they're saying, we rescind our endorsement of Catherine Cortez Masto. And ladies and gentlemen, in my own state, the police union at the state level has endorsed the Democrat who is a cancel the police Democrat, because the current sitting governor of Maryland spoke with the police and encouraged them to support and endorse the Democrat because he was such a baby that he didn't like the fact that his chosen candidate lost in the primary. So, folks, as you can imagine, in my own state, guess what the Democrats doing? The Democrats not debating. And when the Democrats finally do debate, they wait until the last possible minute to debate after people have already started to mail in their absentee ballots. So voting has already started to occur, and they figure, well, what can a debate really do to damage? Because people have already made up their minds because they're already voting. And so an example of good government, as opposed to what they're doing in Nevada with respect to crime and punishment, after Hurricane Ian occurred, 4 alleged looters in Southwest Florida were charged and arrested for looting. And of course, you have DeSantis saying, look, this is not going to stand. You're going to get arrested and you are going to be convicted and you're going to serve time as a result of doing the crime. And there is no better learning tool and teaching moment than to put someone behind bars who has broken the law so blatantly and tried to exploit people, of all things, in a hurricane, and go and try to clean out their houses. And so that's an example of good government. That's a Republican. I'm sure his Democrat opponent is not going to ever do that. The first thing she's going to do is say, oh, it's racism that caused them to loot those houses. You know, it's like, no. They didn't choose houses based on the person's color to loot. They chose to loot houses because there was an opportunity, because the people weren't there, because Hurricane Ian wiped so many people's houses out. And then we have in Pennsylvania, another race, same thing. John Fetterman versus Dr. Oz. Fetterman won't debate Oz. This is even more unique because with Fetterman, not only is he being told by the Democrat National Committee not to debate because he's incredibly stupid, but he's also being told not to debate because he had a stroke and he can barely talk. And clearly he is impaired. His mind is impaired. There's no doubt about it. His speech is impaired. But this happens with strokes, right? It's unfortunate, but it makes the guy unfit for office. If you had a debate, you would actually be able to see if he were truly impaired. But you can't compare and contrast someone when you don't have a debate. So in the Daily Caller, Pennsylvania Senate polls tighten as Dr. Oz hits the campaign trail. So Republicans have decided across the country to just hit the campaign trail and campaign like crazy and talk about the issues. And the Democrats, of course, have run the opposite way and are hiding and have decided not to, across the country, debate whatsoever. So several recent surveys have shown Republican Pennsylvania Senate candidate Mehmet Oz polling within 4 points of Democrat John Fetterman after Oz trailed by more than 6 points throughout most of the summer. So it's kind of interesting. It looks like, let me see, Fox News poll says Fetterman is +4. He was +11. F&M says he was +13. He's now +4. And Trafalgar says Fetterman was +4. Now Fetterman is +2. And Emerson says Fetterman was +4 and now is +2. So if you took the average, it would say that Fetterman is up +3, which is kind of interesting. And so we're telling you this, ladies and gentlemen, because we're giving you examples of key races across the United States where there is no debate and there is no media interested in calling out the individuals who refuse to debate and or calling out the individuals and asking them about their stance on particular issues. The media is only interested in going after the Republicans. Now, you might say, Mark, that's old news. We know that. We know that. But when you combine this with no debate, ladies and gentlemen, it demonstrates to you how we got a Joe Biden, right? Now, to be fair, Donald Trump did shoot himself in the foot in many cases during the election. And I think that is true. And I think we could go over those at some other time and talk about that. But in these particular races, the Democrat Party is in this strange place where they know everything they're doing is wrong. They have to. And so, because if you won't debate, you have to know what you're doing is wrong. And for some reason, we have complete silence, complete and utter silence by the media, because I never see anything about this except in a couple of news sources. Like it's either Fox News or it is Newsmax or it is the Daily Caller, just a few news sources where you have this information. Never do I see this on CNN or MSNBC or CBS or ABC or NBC. Have you ever seen any of those news outlets talk about the fact that candidates aren't debating and how awful it is for our republic? So John Fetterman in PA, in Pennsylvania, is the hoodie-wearing idiot who lives in his parents' basement and has for most of his life. Never had like a real job. So he must be like a Soros guy, because how else could a guy like John Fetterman rise to the level that he is to run for United States Senate if John Fetterman weren't complete and utterly supported by, let's say, George Soros or someone like him? Because Soros always wants stooges to run that he can control. And anyone that is independent-minded would never go for that. But Fetterman, of course, is anything but independent-minded. He's been dependent his entire life on mom and dad. So there are a couple of ads that are out there. We're going to just play one. This is a hit on John Fetterman. But I have to say this. Oz is finally doing the right thing because he's going after crime and punishment in Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania. And that is a good thing, which is why Oz is now gaining ground. Here's an ad. It's a negative ad on Fetterman. It just was released, and here it is.
There once was a man-child in a hoodie, pushing Marxist policy, setting violent prisoners free while borders overflow. Soon may the Fetterman come to bring us radical socialism. One day when the nation is done, we'll wish we'd told him no. Soon may the Fetterman come to bring us radical socialism. One day when the nation is done, we'll wish we'd told him no.
Our American Century is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That is really good. It's Our American Century. I believe that's who we put the ad out there in Pennsylvania. Certainly has a good sound to it, It's pretty good, pretty clever.
It's a parody of a real song.
Is it a parody of a real song? Oh, is it? What's the song again? Because I feel like I know the song for some reason. I can't remember it.
The Weatherman.
Is it The Weatherman? Okay, because I'm thinking a little bit like John Fetterman right now. I've got the cloudy brain. Yeah. John Fetterman. So, folks, here's the thing. All right, now we have ads like that are just making fun of the candidate because the candidate is such an idiot. And a functioning republic would have a functioning media that would also be asking Fetterman really difficult questions. And of course, he can't answer them for a variety of reasons. One is he's dumb, and the other is that the gentleman really has difficulty speaking and thinking because of his stroke, which would, of course, in any functioning republic, make him disqualified to be a United States senator. We also have John Kennedy of Louisiana. So as you know, John Kennedy of Louisiana, he's a United States senator. He's hysterically funny. And John Kennedy of Louisiana is this guy who just kind of says things the way they are. He doesn't need anyone to write anything for him. He's well-grounded. He's smart. He's able to articulate his positions without any help whatsoever, and he does so with humor. Well, John Kennedy decided, since he's running for re-election, he's going to talk about crime as well. Might as well, because in Louisiana, we all know that in New Orleans, crime is utterly out of control. It is so dangerous in New Orleans that a city that relies on tourism actually could see itself collapse because people are afraid to go there. That's how bad it is. We have the ad from John Kennedy, and here it is.
Violent crime is surging in Louisiana. Woke leaders blame the police. I blame the criminals. A mom should not have to look over her shoulder when she's pumping gas. I voted against the early release of violent criminals, and I opposed defunding the police. Look, if you hate cops just because they're cops, the next time you get in trouble, call a crackhead. I'm John Kennedy, and I approve this message.
Call a crackhead. See? Funny, simple, to the point, accentuates the stupidity of the Democrat policy of letting the bad guys out of jail to victimize the good guys. And, it's like, okay, so if you don't like police, you want to cancel them, then call a crackhead next time. See what happens. And folks, the Republicans sometimes, I think, forget the simplicity of elections. Namely, that running ads like the John Kennedy ad that you just heard makes perfect sense. That is how you win elections, by using humor to accentuate the stupidity of your opponent. And as you can imagine, in that race, the Democrat doesn't want to debate either. So what do the Democrats have to offer to the country to win in November? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Washington Post decided to circle the wagons. And for the record, when I was in college, we used to call the Washington Post the Washington Compost. We called it Pravda on the Potomac, which is a reference to the state-owned newspaper in the former Soviet Union, Pravda. The Washington Post is worse than it has ever been. They put out an article, ladies and gentlemen, to circle the wagons for the Democrats, titled, "Why Recession is Good for You." Why recession is good for you. Since inflation increased to over 8.5%, I've learned to prepare wieners more than 20 different ways. This is one of the quotes from the Washington Post article. So in headline news, USA, in a desperate bid to alter the optics of the current recession, ahead of November's midterm elections, the notorious leftist Washington Post published a list titled 7 Reasons the Recession Could Be Good for You Financially. 7 reasons the recession could be good for you financially. This is the Washington Post. The piece, written by advice columnist Michelle Singletary, who's, by the way, well-known and has been writing for the Post for many years, has a subtitle, boldly telling readers recession isn't all bad news, and offers 7 silver linings. Singletary kicks off the article with a quote from President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the Great Depression. Quote, "So, first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." What a brilliant writer Michelle Singletary is. She then goes on to say that despite things being bad now, at least they are not as bad as they were in the Great Depression. I have to say this because, as Roosevelt pointed out, she says, fear itself can lead to actions that worsen your finances, she wrote. While many people are hurting, there may be ways to cushion the downside. Yes, mortgage rates are higher, she said, but the upside is that sellers in many markets will have to lower their asking price so that buyers can qualify for the loans. Unbelievable. Folks, this is what happens when you have the dumbest people in America writing and the most crooked people in America writing for what used to be well-known newspapers. Because the Washington Post, even though we called it Pravda on the Potomac and Compost on the Potomac, or the Washington Compost, even though we called it all those things, there were parts of the Post that were good sections and some reporters that were truly fair. But now it's just one complete and utter piece of rag that you wouldn't even use in the restroom, honestly. So you have all of these individuals who have decided to tweet out a number of different things about the Washington Post and this comment. It's incredible. So here are some comments. Thought of the day. Today, every inhabitant of this planet must contemplate the day that when this planet may no longer be habitable, every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut out at any moment by accident or miscalculation or madness. I'm not sure really what that had to do with their article. But then it says, come on, Bezos, let this rag Washington Compost die. One after another, just like this, about the Washington Compost. Just awful. And so the reason I'm reading this, ladies and gentlemen, is because the Biden administration has nothing to offer, and nor do the Democrats. The Democrats have nothing to offer the United States of America, which is why they aren't debating, which is what this podcast is about. Sorry, no debate. And so you have the media circling the wagons, and you have the Biden administration trying to pay off people to get their vote. As you know, the Biden administration tried to pay off millennials to pay off their loans, which means to pay them off so that they will vote for him and the Democrats. The Biden administration has given $41 million in contracts to Soros-linked groups to help illegal aliens fight deportations, ladies and gentlemen. This is true. And the Biden administration, of course, has, in addition to that, released massive amounts of oil reserves to try to make the price of gas go artificially lower because of the policies of trying to cancel gas and natural gas and coal and oil. And to that I say this: we need to have a law passed state by state, but also at the federal level if possible, and maybe it's a constitutional amendment that says that a president of the United States and a governor, of course, this would be a state constitution, but if it's federal, then it would be the president of the United States, cannot unilaterally choose to pass bills or sign bills that pay people off within, let's say, 6 months of an election. So here's an example, okay? Gavin Newsom, when he was recalled in California, the legislature in California passed a bill, and Gavin Newsom signed it, that gave everyone a $500 stimulus check in California right before the election. So of course you're going to vote for Gavin Newsom because you're afraid, like, if the guy doesn't win, I might not get my $500. That needs to be changed. It needs to be made illegal at least 6 months prior to election, at least. Likewise, at the federal level, and maybe this is a Convention of States idea for the Article 5 Convention of States, where the states get together and they decide to make some really good common sense amendments to the United States Constitution. Maybe one of them would be that the federal government cannot, Congress cannot, and the president cannot engage in legislation or pass legislation that provides payoffs to large groups of constituencies in the United States, like the $400 billion student payoff, or have monies that go to so-called nonprofit or non-government organizations that then try to engage in electioneering in the United States. Because otherwise you can just use the Treasury of the United States to buy votes. And you might say, oh, well, Mark, this has been going on for years. I understand that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not naive. What I'm saying is 6 months prior to election, it should be prohibited. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's pretty blatant. You might say, well, where do you draw the line? Well, it's pretty easy. I think you draw the line at one of them, which is trying to pay people off and try to pay off their loans, which means you're paying them off, loans that they voluntarily engaged in to pay for their college. That's paying for votes. So is artificially reducing the gas prices by releasing the U.S. oil reserves right before an election. That's manipulating, of course, the voters in a way that should not be permitted. And I'm just saying 6 months before the election. Before then, do whatever you want, okay? With respect to this nonsense, as long as the bills are originated in Congress and they are single subject bills and they pass through Congress and the president signs them, fine. But 6 months leading up to an election, it ought not be allowed. Nonetheless, the Washington Post, ladies and gentlemen, decided to let you know why the recession is so good for you. So let me get this straight. We have a podcast called Sorry, No Debate. We have no debate in Arizona with Kerry Lake, who's running for governor. We have no debate in Nevada with Adam Laxalt, who's running for United States Senate and would flip a Senate seat, against Catherine Cortez Masto. No debate. We have no debate in Pennsylvania, except that Fetterman's people have said, well, we might do a debate, but it's only after early voting is well underway, which means it's really no longer a debate because voting has already started. So no debate. No debate in Louisiana, because God forbid, who could possibly defend all of the crime going on in New Orleans, Louisiana? No debate there. No debate in my state of Maryland, where the far left-wing gubernatorial candidate, Wes Moore, refuses to debate because if he does debate, he's going to actually have to defend his cancel the police nonsense and his emphasis on CRT and equity. He'd have to defend all of that. And of course, we have a media that's not in one state actually asking the other candidates who are refusing to debate any questions, including why they refuse to debate at all. And then the pièce de la résistance is the Washington Post. Pravda on the Potomac, which had probably the single most insulting to your intelligence article I've read so far this year, titled Why Recession is Good for You. 7 reasons why recession is good for you. Yeah. Reason number 1, you can't afford to buy food, so therefore you'll lose some weight. Reason number 2, you can't afford to buy gasoline, so your car will be really low mileage in 5 years. We need some more reasons, Oh my gosh. This is how stupid the left has become. How can you possibly know how stupid they are if they're refusing to debate, ladies and gentlemen? Not to mention how we started out this podcast, which is to tell you and to inform you that the world is less safe than it has ever been, on the brink of a potential nuclear exchange in some way, and all of these really bad actors who want to depose the United States world-class status as the only superpower and can't wait to do that. All of that happening at the same time, and a press that's going, it's okay, even if we have nuclear war, as long as the Democrats are in charge, that's all that matters. The recession's good for you, don't worry. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Couldn't make this stuff up, even if I tried. But that's where we are today in 2022 in October, just a few weeks before the general election, and probably a week and a half or 2 weeks before people are already starting to vote early voting in many states, which I think this vote by mail stuff, which is 4 weeks before the election, is absolutely idiocy, because you're going to vote before you actually ever have heard the candidates debate. By definition, that should not be permitted. But that's exactly what the Democrats want. It's all by design. You know it, and I know it. And that's why we must work so hard to win this election. And that's it for Mark of the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark of the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.